You know, JB, I don't know why people say the ICC is weak. Obviously, it can't take every case that comes to it. But the ICC has been very strong in prosecutions in the past. Milosevic in Serbia is in prison today because of genocide that he committed and led in the Serbian war against Bosnia.
Munnayuganda oba omuntu yenna gwe wawangalira mu ggwanga Uganda omanye eddembe lyo? Obadde okimanyi nti eddembe ly'olina likuweebwa ssemateeka? Era wali okirowoozezaako nti singa eddembe ly'olina ligezaako ne lirinyirirwa olina obuvunaanyizibwa okulirwanirira? Nabwe gutyo bwe baba nga bannayuganda baagaanye okulwanira eddembe lyabwe, bw'atyo Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu kye yava avaayo n'agamba yajja ddirwanirira. Era abasinga obungi baasalawo kuzinga mikono ne bagamba twabikwasa Robert Kyagulanyi y'anaatulwanirira n'atununula. Mu kubeera nti bakkiriza ne babikwasa Robert Kyagulanyi, omulimu gwagukoze era waali alwanirira ddembe lya munnayuganda okulaba nti teririnnyirirwa. Nabwe gutyo n'abazungu baasalawo kukiraba ne bagamba nti ono omusajja alabika ali ku mazima, ali mu kulwanirira ddembe lya munnayuganda okulaba nga teriddamu kutyoboolebwa. Ensi zonna zakkiriza nti kati Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu ye muntu asobola okukulembera Uganda mu nkola eya demokulaasi. Mu nsi zonna ebyokulwanagana entalo bagenze babisaanyaawo. Baakola omukago okulaba nti entalo ziggwawo ez'amawanga nga balwanira ebintu ebitaliimu. Mu nsi ezikulemberwa Amerika baateekawo etteeka nti singa osangibwa ng'ozzeemu okukyokoza olutalo ku nsi yonna oba mu nsi mwennyini mw'oli ng'otulugunya abantu ng'obamalako eddembe lyabwe, ojja kuba ovunaanibwa mu mateeka era nga waliwo kkooti ya ICC yeyina okuvunaana omuntu yenna oyo abaasazeewo okulinnyirira eddembe lya bannansi bonna. Bano baateesa nti buli ggwanga erinaagezangako okuwakula olutalo ku ggwanga eddala lijja kuvunaanibwa mu mateeka. Ne bw'abeera muntu ssekinnoomu n'avaayo okuwakula olutalo ku bantu b'akulembera kaabeere pulezidenti, n'agezaako okuwakula olutalo ku bantu b'eggwanga eryo ly'akulembera nga bamalako eddembe lyabwe, kitegeeza nti ajja kuvunaanibwa ng'omuntu mu kkooti ya ICC. Nabwe gutyo Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu ebbanga ly'amaze ng'atwala ensonga ze mu ICC nga tebazitunulamu. Baavuddeyo ne balaba nti ddala ebigenda mu maaso mu ggwanga Uganda okutulugunya bannayuganda kususse. Ne balaba ku butambi bwa Zaabalaga, ne basinzira ku firimu gye yakola eya The People's President, ne balaba nti ebikolwa ebiri mu ggwanga Uganda tebisaanidde. Ne balaba nti waliwo okunyigiriza eddembe lya munnayuganda nga bakozesa emmundu. Bwe batyo kyebavudde basalawo Mwai Museveni ne mutabani we Muhoozi ne bakkiriza ICC ebayite bennyonnyoleko ku ebyo bye bazze bakola bannayuganda. Munnamateeka ali musango gwa Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu gwe yawa mu ICC ng'ono wa ggwanga lya Amerika amannya ayitibwa Bruce Afran avuddeyo n'atangaaza ku nsonga eno nti lwaki baasinzidde batwale Museveni ne mutabani we Muhoozi mu kkooti ya ICC nga balaba nti ebikolwa ebigenda mu maaso tebigwanidde. Munnamateeka ono agamba nti ICC erina emitendera gy'egoberera okulaba ng'efuna omukulembeze oyo yenna abaatulugunya bannansi be, so tebamalaga mupapira nga bannayuganda babadde bakirowooza nti ensonga zino bazikutte n'obunafu obw'enjawulo.
Well, the ICC, the International Criminal Court, is a real court. If someone is indicted by the ICC, they will be arrested by any police organization anywhere in the world. And they will be taken to The Hague, where they will be held in custody and put on trial. It is not a hearing in the General Assembly of the United Nations. It is a true court, and if it indicts, anyone who's indicted can no longer travel in the world because they will be arrested immediately. And it means that Museveni and Muhoozi will always live in fear of leaving Uganda. And even the Uganda police could arrest them if there's an indictment. So it's a true court, and it puts them in the position of true potential criminal defendants.
All right, Mr. Bruce, what are your thoughts on the effectiveness of the ICC in holding Museveni and Muhoozi accountable for their actions despite recent accusations of the weakness of ICC in handling such cases?
You know, JB, I don't know why people say the ICC is weak. Obviously, it can't take every case that comes to it. But the ICC has been very strong in prosecutions in the past. Milosevic in Serbia is in prison today because of genocide that he committed and led in the Serbian war against Bosnia. And so the ICC is significant and does have power. It is not a weak court. People say that because they're afraid of it. So when someone is afraid of someone with power, they say they're weak. That doesn't make them weak. The ICC has power. And we have now presented 215 witness statements to the ICC, each one describing in detail the torture and abuse they underwent at the hands of Museveni and his son Muhuzi.
Munnamateeka Bruce Afrani agamba nti balina okufuna obujulizi kw'abo abantu abazze bakolebwako ebikolobero kubanga Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu waliwo abaana abajja bakolebwako ebikolobero era n'abagamba nti baliwo obujulizi mu kkooti singa bali babeetaaza okuyita Museveni. Kati munnamateeka agambye nti abantu abo kkooti ejja kubeetaaga bagende baweeyo obujulizi bwabwe ku ngeri ki gye baatulugunyizibwamu gavumenti ya mwami Museveni na bikolobero ki ebyabakolebwako bwe balinga mu buduukulu gye balinga babakuumidde. Ku nsonga ezaaliwo mu mwaka gwa 2016 mwami Museveni lwe yatugumbula abantu b'e Kasese abasoba mu 100. Ono agamba nti ensonga zino ICC yazifuna n'eziraba bulabi olw'ensonga y'okuba nti wali tewali bujulizi bumatiza kubanga ebiseera ebyo abaaliwo bwa opposition leader baali tebatutteeyo bujulizi bukakasiza ddala nti ekintu kino kyakoleddwa gavumenti yaffe yennyini. Naye Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu lwe yavaayo n'abeera nti ensonga ze azikwata ku butambi n'abubawa nabo bennyini ne beerabirako ku bigenda maaso mu ggwanga. Ono agamba nti kwe bajja okusinziira okwo balabe ebizze bikolebwa ku bannayuganda n'okulaba engeri gye basobola okutaasaamu eggwanga lyattu Uganda, bannayuganda basobole okufuna eddembe lyabwe mu bujjuvu. Bannayuganda bangi babadde beebuuza nti omusango guno tugufuniramu wa Museveni okutwalibwa mu ICC. Ensonga zino Bruce Afrani munnamateeka ali mu musango ogwo azinnyonnyodde bulungi era kati buli munnayuganda mweteefuteefu okulabako mwami Museveni ng'ayitiddwa yennyonnyoleko ne mutabani we. Wenjogerera bino Museveni abadde yadduseeko ewa munywanyi we Putin nakyemalira munne okumwebuuzaako ku butya wagenda okukikola okulaba nga vvuunuka ebizibu bino byalimu.
Mr. Bruce, do you think the 215 are enough, or if there are more victims out there, they can come over to you and present their cases?
Oh, absolutely. If this is going to continue, we want to hear from those people. We know, JB, that thousands and thousands were arrested and imprisoned. We can't get affidavits from everyone. But the very fact that 215 people, almost all of whom are still in Uganda, only a small number outside of Uganda now, nearly all of these people still live in Uganda. The fact that they had the courage to come forward and sign these statements and give their testimony to our lawyers in Uganda, that means that we have true evidence for the ICC. That is a lot of evidence. It's very strong. I think in most cases, only an organization comes to the ICC and asks it to investigate. Here we have 215 people who have said to the ICC, here is what happened. This is very strong evidence against the Museveni regime.
Mr. Bruce, there is something maybe, I don't know, maybe you know about it. There have been claims from regime apologists that this case is a reaction and actually a response to the recently signed the anti-homosexuality bill. What is your interpretation of this viewpoint?
JB, it's amazing that anyone would make such a statement. We have gone to the ICC twice before with general reports as soon as the election killings took place about what happened. So this is not new. And this particular complaint, which now has the actual evidence, was prepared beginning a year ago, long before the anti-homosexuality bill. This is just an excuse by Museveni to try to undermine what we've done, which is to give true evidence of the crimes his administration commits. It has nothing to do with the anti-homosexuality bill. This was done this was put in place long before that. By the way, JB, if I could add one more thing. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
215 witness statements takes a long time to put together. This was done long before the anti-gay bill in Uganda.
So it's like this process has taken more than a year or more than 2 years.
This process, in terms of gathering the evidence, is a full years-long process. It took us a full year to put together this evidence. And people may wonder why it took us time, because 215 people had to be interviewed. They had to have their statements taken. They had to have them prepared. They had to go back to them. And remember, in Uganda, it's not always easy to get from one part of the country to another quickly. And so it took time to do, but it had to be done right. And that's the important thing. And that's why we took the time.
Talking about the 215 people, we all know that they are still in Uganda. They have given their testimonies. How sure are you that they will not change their statements? Because some of them are still exposed to the same system. And are they insulated from the regime with brutal arm? And how secure are they? And by the way, how secure are you in this case?
Well, I guess we'll deal with me first. You know, I'm an American lawyer. I live openly in Princeton, New Jersey. My address is known to the world. It's on all the papers. I think that the Museveni government would be very foolish if it did anything towards me. That would invoke immediate responses by the United States government, which is not going to stand for one of its citizens, particularly a lawyer, being attacked or threatened by frankly, a criminal regime abroad. So JB, I feel very secure. And frankly, even if I didn't feel secure, I would do this work, because it's the threat of fear that lets dictators stay in power. So even if I felt threatened, I would still do this. And my wife actually is very supportive of this work. And, you know, we move forward with this. So we're not going to sit in fear of General Museveni and his son. As far as the people in Uganda are concerned, remember the ICC process is absolutely confidential. And the ICC never reveals the names of the people who come to it. And even when it comes to Uganda, if it does, to do the investigation, it doesn't tell the government who it's visiting. And so these individuals are protected, and their names will never be revealed to the government. And frankly, knowing the situation in Uganda over the last 2 years, the very fact that they came forward now tells me they're going to stick with their story no matter what, because they took courage to do what all of these people have done. And I believe they're going to stay that way, because they've come to recognize that the only way to fight a dictatorship is to come forward. And yes, there may be some people who are afraid, but when you're afraid and you come forward, that's when the dictator loses his power. His mystique is now gone. And by the way, the recent articles in the New York Times and the Guardian, the Daily Monitor, now your show, in which are directly talking about these charges, also demonstrates that the mystique of Museveni is disappearing fast, because people are not afraid any longer to speak out. And once that happens, the dictator's power goes away. And so I think these people are going to stand with this story. And I also don't think the Museveni government's going to threaten them anymore, because if they do, that confirms to the world what they've been doing. So I think we've seen a change now in the power of this government. Now that it's been exposed, it can't continue to do the things it's been doing.
Sorry for that.
That's okay.
Mr. Bruce, I'm very sure since you've been following Uganda's politics, it's not the first time ICC is handling a case involving similar occurrences. In 2016 and 2017, the Office of the Prosecutor of ICC, it received several petitions relating to the massacre of people of Kasese. But ICC concluded that those killings were not justifiable. And a number of petitions have been filed against Museveni's conduct, but the conclusions has always been in his favor. What gives you confidence this time around that you will succeed? Because some have tried and it's like they've failed. What gives you that confidence?
Well, remember, JB, I don't know that the court will take this case. I'm not telling people the court's going to take this case. I couldn't say that as a lawyer. but we have provided the evidence the court needs to take this case. As far as Kasizza is concerned, the court said there was not evidence of a continuing pattern of illegality. It never said these killings were lawful. It said we can't find a pattern of wrongful conduct continuing onwards. See, the ICC doesn't investigate a single case. It looks for a pattern over time of criminal conduct. And that's what we have here. We have 215 people who say that over a period of 3 years, the same thing keeps happening. Abductions from the street, prison in SFC and chieftaincy of military intelligence centers, tortures that are identical in most cases. How many people have said they have chemicals in the eye? How many people have said they've been forced to dance for 12 hours until they fall down and then they're beaten when they fall? All of this is a pattern over 3 years. And that's what was missing, the ICC said in the Kasizza case. But here we have a pattern of plain torture and abduction by this government. So I don't know the court will take the case, but we have evidence that's different here than in the Kasizza case. And by the way, the comment that many people have said, and MUSEVENI and other leaders in Africa say, that the ICC unfairly targets Africa. I know it's on a list of subjects. If you don't mind, let me get into that if I can.
Yeah, please continue.
The ICC investigates Africa because Africa is the place where dictators are harming their people. Africa is the place where these leaders are committing crimes against humanity. Now, China does, but China's not in the court. But African countries are within the court. They all sign the court statute. And Africa is the place where most of these brutal dictatorships still exist. And the ICC is not prejudiced against Africans. When the ICC investigates an African dictator, it's trying to protect African people. The ICC exists to protect the people of Africa from crimes against humanity. So the ICC is not racist when it investigates. It's trying to protect people in Africa from dictators in Africa. And that's the important point that needs to be understood. It's MUSEVENI who harms the African people in Uganda, and it's MUSEVENI and his colleagues in Africa who harm African people. And the ICC exists to put a brake on that and stop it. So it's not racist when the ICC investigates African leaders. The ICC is doing its job to protect the people of this continent.
Actually, MUSEVENI refers to ICC as an instrument of Western imperialism targeting African leaders. That's what he calls it. About the case still, because I'm very sure this has excited very many Ugandans in Uganda and outside Uganda. How can those very, very concerned, not actually only Ugandans, but those outside Uganda's borders help in this case? How can they render help?
Well, one of the purposes of this case is to give people courage. It's to give Ugandans, wherever they are, and other people who live under these types of governments, courage. And once we go to the court and we expose what has happened, it makes people feel stronger. So in one sense, it doesn't even matter what the court does a year or two from now. Right now, we've given courage to people. And that's an important part of challenging a dictatorship. So I would say that people who live outside of Uganda need to work with people in Uganda. They need to gather their stories, talk to people in Uganda who've been abused, and let us know, contact us. I'm an open book. Everyone knows how to find me. Let me know what those people have experienced so we can get new affidavits and new witness statements. So the people outside of Uganda can uniquely communicate with those inside. And also, people outside Uganda can speak to me, tell me what stories they've had personally, because that may help us. So that's one thing to do. And, I think people in Uganda need to begin to have moral courage and not be afraid any longer. Because now that we've exposed the regime, it's much safer for people to speak their minds. Look what's happened in the Daily Monitor this week. front pages exposing these crimes. Your show will go out to many, many people in Uganda. And so people now can see that the regime's on the defensive. It can't arrest people on the streets randomly anymore. It can't shoot people down because now the world is watching, because the ICC process puts this government under the microscope. And so